Hi everyone and welcome back to another tutorial. In this tutorial we will look at basic animation where we will simply create a title and then have it start off on the left of screen and come onto screen. So let's do this. I'll click on my title tool and simply click over there and then type in the word cycling. So that's our title. And now before we go ahead and look at how this cycling title could be animated, I'd like to quickly talk about a new feature that Premiere has brought in very recently, I think around March, April 2019, and that is if you have this cycling title selected and you come up to your effect controls tab up here, you will notice that there is a new property titled vector motion. So we have been used to seeing the motion property up here, but there's a new property called vector motion, and this basically is a new property that has come in to sort of handle the scaling and movement of vectors. Vectors basically being just like the title we just created, or anything that you might create using the pen tool over here, a rectangle or ellipse, for example. Let's have a quick look at the difference between motion and vector motion. So I've got this title here. What I'll do is I'll pull this title into the center of the screen, roughly there-ish. We'll come to motion and do a scale. Let's scale this up to about 700%. And have a look over there. I'll even get the resolution to its maximum. Have a look. It is very blurred and it has started pixelating. So I'll maximize that screen so that you'll see the blur and the pixelation. That's because the regular motion scales the title, treating it like a raster file basically. So when you scale it, it starts pixelating. So I'll go back to our regular view. Now I'll take this back to 100 and let's this time round open up the vector motion and then go into scaling and type in the same scale value 700 and have a look at that. I'll maximize that screen using the tilde key and you can see that it's a lot cleaner. That's because it's treating the title as a vector file, and you can basically scale this to any size you like according to Adobe, and you will not see any pixelation. So that's interesting to know, I thought, and I think that's a fantastic feature. So we will actually do our animation this time round using the vector motion property as opposed to using the motion property. They're pretty much the same. Animation wise, you'll be using the same steps, the same principle will apply. All right, let's get down to the animation now. So I'll bring my cycling title back to where it was to begin with, over there. That's fine. Now, let's assume that what we want to do animation wise is have this title start, let's say over here on the left of screen, obviously where we won't see it, and then over a couple of seconds it's going to come onto screen. Let's see how we do that. The first thing we need to do is make sure our title is selected on the timeline. Make sure we're at the very first frame of that title, so we can simply use our backward arrow just to go back one frame, come forward one frame, and yes, we are on the first frame of that title. Come back up to our effect controls. Make sure that vector motion is opened up. You can also do exactly the same steps that we're going to go through. You can do it with the motion option as well. So the first thing we need to do is click the little stopwatch button here into the left of motion, because we are going to animate motion to have this title starting off screen and come onto screen. That will be a motion animation. So I will click this little stopwatch icon there and you will see that it goes blue. Now clicking the stopwatch icon is an important step. Otherwise, if you do not do this, you will find that your animation will not be recorded. So the stopwatch goes blue, and then you'll also see that there's a little keyframe that appears here, exactly where the playhead is at. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and change these values to position the title off screen. Currently, these position values have the title on screen. That is, this one here is the horizontal value and this one here is a vertical value. So we will click, hold and drag. Remember, click, hold and drag, and I'm dragging now to the left, which will position the title off screen. You can see that little red outline there showing you the position of the title, and it is currently off screen, and we will then need to move it on screen as well. Now, it's important to remember that this keyframe that we created when we click the stopwatch button first off has now recorded these values. So this keyframe is recording these set of values, which puts the title off screen, and we can call that position A, for example. Now we'll move forward in time, let's say approximately a couple of seconds there-ish. Doesn't really matter, you can go as far or as near as you like. And then what we'll do is we are going to adjust these values once again so that the title appears on screen. So I'll click, hold and drag the title onto screen roughly to the position that it was before, and you will see two things have happened. Obviously the cycling title is now on screen. The second important thing we need to observe is that we've just created a new keyframe. That's because these values were changed, and Premiere creates a new keyframe as soon as it recognizes that the values have been changed. So we have position A over here and we have position B over here. So if we simply move our playhead back and play this back, we see our animation. So that is a most basic animation, and we should be practicing this A and B position animation till we're thorough with it before we move on to doing any other sort of animation, because this principle is what will apply pretty much to any sort of movement or scaling or any other similar sort of animation. Now, one thing is important is that you recognize that this is time here. So basically between keyframe A and keyframe B is time. So I told you approximately 2 seconds, and it takes approximately 2 seconds for the cycling title to start off screen and then come onto screen. Now, if we wanted this cycling title to come onto screen faster or quicker, we simply reduce the time here by just grabbing a keyframe and dragging it closer to the first keyframe. And if we were to play that back, you'll see that it comes on faster. So if we were to take it even closer, you'll see that it'll come on even faster. And then obviously if we put more time in between the keyframes like so, and we take the playhead back and play it back, you'll see that it takes a longer time to come onto screen. So there you go. I'll take this keyframe roughly back here. Now what I will also do is I will temporarily delete this keyframe. I'll simply pick it and hit the delete key, and I'll simply come back over here, roughly giving us that 2 seconds of time to get the title back on screen. So what we did was we came over here and then we adjusted these values, which created that second keyframe here, if you recall. What I could also do is two other things, and I'll show you both of them. One is I could easily click this little fella here, which is add remove keyframe, and then change the values, which basically gives you exactly the same result. Okay, so you can add a keyframe and then change the values, or even if you change the values and you were in a new position like we were before, you will find that the keyframe gets added. Now here's the second option I was talking about. So I'll delete that keyframe. So let's assume once again we've come back to position B and we want to now change the values and create that second keyframe here. Considering that the title actually started on screen over here, and that on-screen position had particular values or coordinates that were registered before, what we can simply do is hit this little fella here, which says reset parameter, and as soon as I click that, it creates a new keyframe, and it also brings back the values, the positioning values of the cycling title, to bring it back to exactly where it was before we pulled it off screen. So that's another little method of getting things back to screen or back to the same values that you had before. One last tip that I'd like to leave you with is that whenever you create keyframes and for whatever reason, if you wanted to move between keyframes, let's say to get to another keyframe and change any value thereof, I would strongly recommend that you use these little left and right arrows to jump to keyframes, as opposed to trying to basically move the playhead and then find a keyframe and then change values. It is a good habit or best practice to use these little arrows to move from keyframe to keyframe. That's it for this tutorial. Look forward to the next one.